Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, Objectively Dan, and joining me this week is someone who I hate so much. I don't know why she's here. She's just...
What is this show?
The worst. This is...
What is this?
Exactly. Who
are you?
This is Christy. She is my girlfriend. But, hold on. Before you cry, nepotism. We've been going out for about a year now, and I always told Christy, because you'd ask, hey, I want to be on your show. Well, you got to do something in the community first, right? You got to do stuff. Otherwise, people are just going to say, oh, you can't just have your girlfriend on. And you have. And you've been doing really good. So Christy has started a blog called...
It's called Good After God.
Good After God. Mm-hmm. And it's more like, it's just, I would describe it as the personal rantings of a non-religious girl in Alabama.
Yeah. What I tell other people is that I just find things that make me mad and I talk about them.
Yes. And it's a really good blog. You should definitely go check it out. I'm not biased. I'm an objective source of information, and you should always listen to me. So Christy is here. She's here with me this week. She's been helping me move in to my new place. I just thought, hey, let's get her on this week. Let's talk about stuff. How's it going, Christy?
It's going good.
Yeah?
How are you?
Going really good. What's it like being a non-religious person in Alabama right now?
A lot of fun.
A lot of fun? Tell me how fun it is.
Well, I'm sure you guys out in the audience are aware of all the Alabama abortion laws that have just been passed. That's like the big thing right now.
Yeah.
So most of the people, where I'm from are like totally for it. And they're like, oh my gosh, God is so good.
Yep.
God bless our state. So proud to be from here. And that's awful. I hate that. But, it is what it is. And,
Okay, so tell me this, Christy, because this is a show where I ask people why people think what they think is true, should be true, or is true, right? Like why they believe what they believe. So why do you think this abortion laws going in Alabama and other places are bad? Tell me exactly what makes them so wrong.
Oh, God. Dan likes to do SE on me, and, so that's a fun thing.
Yeah.
But, I really think that it's not good for the people in poverty, the women that are living in poverty and having to, being forced to carry and raise a kid that you can't afford or aren't mentally able to take care of or, physically able to carry, that sucks. Mm-hmm. And I think that this law is going to cause a lot more death than it is designed to prevent.
Yeah, like a good analogy I heard one time was, we don't think that kids should be able to drive or have a license until they're 16, but we're okay with 14-year-old girls like going to term with pregnancy. Like it's just it's a different kind of mind. This is an interesting issue for me because it wasn't really something that really came up where I live. I never really had conversations about it until I was at least a teenager. And even then, I didn't even think I had very strong opinions on it one way or the other. It was just never something that crossed my mind. But I'm also like a dude. Also, I came from a family where that was just never a problem. Even if a situation like that where the consideration would have been come up, I wouldn't have been financially sort of strapped for something like that. You know what I mean? And I live in an area, or at least I grew up in an area where there was a Planned Parenthood in the city in which I lived in, and you didn't have to go super far. And of course, it's still legal. We'll see how that's going to be in the next couple months once Alabama kind of changes those laws, right?
Well, it is still legal right now, or it is technically still legal, but the law was passed, and it's about, I think it's going to be in November when it goes into effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, there's people still out there, like, I think there's only like 3 or 4 actual clinics that provide those kinds of services in the state anyway. There's not very many. I think there's 2 Planned Parenthoods in Alabama, and then there's some other places that will provide this service. But, it's still like this huge issue that people are saying, like, oh my gosh, we have to go tell everybody that they're all sinners and that everybody's going to hell. And, for people that preach about loving people unconditionally, you would think that they would be a lot more loving,
Well, yeah, I mean, I have extended family who's Catholic, and so this is a very tough issue for them. This is like a no-go issue around them, right? Because the Catholic world feels really strongly about this, right? That there is a soul somewhere stuffed in there, like that, that during the process of fertilization, that somehow that is a baby boy, and that it is a person, and that we need to treat it as such. Like there's no distinguishing, there's no nuance to that. It's just like it's right there as soon as the sperm hits the egg, and it's an interesting thing to talk about because especially if you don't believe in a soul like you or I do, it almost doesn't make sense. The arguments just kind of fall apart, right?
Yeah, and well, also there's that thing with the there's some information that's come out about nuns that have basically had sex and are.
Well, I think nuns have always been having sex. I just
okay, well, yeah, but they are basically told and forced to go have abortions.
Mm. Yeah, that's some interesting stuff too. When you hear about some of those. Kind of, I don't know if they're secret protocols. I mean, they kind of are. There are protocols for those situations. I remember reading about that, and but the public at large doesn't really know or don't have access to exactly what those policies and procedures are, which is really interesting. But anyway, that's kind of a sad topic. Let's move on.
Let's talk about something happy.
Let's talk about something happy. What's something happy that's been going on with you?
Well, I'm here.
You're here. You're here with me. That's true. What else?
Yeah. Well,
how's the blog? How's it going?
Blog's good. The blog's good. I have an idea of what I want to talk about on my next post.
That's cool.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing about doing a show with your girlfriend. It's that when I do people with people I don't know as well or just kind of friends, you have a lot more to talk about. I talk to you like every single day, so it's almost
Dan
like I
knows
have
everything about me.
We have to like reiterate like kind of stuff that we've already talked about and stuff, and like so I think people might wonder where we might have met. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of a fun.
Well, did you want to talk about that?
Well, I just want we actually met at an atheist conference. We met at the Secular Student Alliance, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then we started doing the long distance from then. That was about a year ago now.
Yeah.
And that's
almost
really cool.
It'll be a year in July.
Mm-hmm. So before, and this is an interesting thing to talk about too, talking about religion in your relationships, right? Because you were the first atheist girl I had ever really dated. I had never dated somebody who wasn't religious before that, but that wasn't your experiences.
No, I've actually dated a lot of atheists and agnostics and a lot of different backgrounds of people because in my family, my parents kind of always told me we don't really care who you date as long as they are making you happy and they are, treating you right.
Yeah, but you were still Christian when you were dating all those guys, right? Yeah. So that's kind of interesting because I was. I could not have imagined myself 5 years ago with an atheist girl. I would have never thought that would have been the case.
Yeah, I was always a very open-minded Christian. I was, I was always totally cool with the LGBT community. I was totally cool with other faiths. All of that was just I was just kind of like one of those Christians or believers that was just can't everybody just please get along, coexist, And I'm still like that, but just now I don't believe in God.
What's your opinion on interfaith relationships? Do you think they could work?
Well, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I have some family out here that's watching. Hello. And my grandpa is an atheist. My grandmother was very religious. And although I know that may have been a topic of discussion between them, they loved each other up until, my grandmother died about 2 years ago. And so I kind of saw with my own eyes that it could work. It's just difficult.
But so I also think if you're talking about somebody who's says they're not religious and then another person who also says they're spiritual, right? But that's kind of, there's a spectrum of religiosity almost.
Right.
Right. Where religion almost you could say gets in the way of your compatibility with people, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it just depends on, both people's sides of things and how open-minded and willing you are to engage with people with different ideas. And, if your faith is something that is extremely important to you or your lack of faith is something that's extremely important to you, then you're going to want to be with somebody that has those same ideas.
Yeah. Well, Christy, if I became a Christian tomorrow, if I had a coming to Jesus moment, And I was like, Christy, the Lord has spoken to me. He's in my heart now. He's my number one. And I want you to accept him, but that's okay. We can work on that. I still want to be with you. What would you say?
How do you know?
How do I know? Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, some SE on you.
Okay, so you would try to question it.
You taught me. Yeah,
but
of course.
So like, oh yeah, I get. So if you're in a relationship with someone, I think that's an appropriate time to ask.
Yeah.
To kind of prod at that a little bit, right?
For sure.
Because like that's the person you're living with. That's the person you're spending a lot of your time with, right? Yeah.
Right. And I mean, all the people that I dated when I was a Christian, and they weren't. That was in like high school and early college, and so these weren't people that I was super duper planning on, spending the rest of my life with, or like being really serious about. These were just people that I like went out on dates with, went to prom or something.
See, that's so different from how I grew up though, because I was always like, okay, this girl, you need to date with the intention of marriage. Every single one of my like girlfriends, I had that in the back of my mind, like, oh, I need to date with the intentions of like marrying that person.
Yeah.
Even if I could see that it wasn't going to work out in the long run.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. The same. I mean, I had sort of that idea, but I never really was super serious about it. I would just, I would date somebody and I'd be like, oh, well, maybe I could do this with them, or maybe we could. But it was never really I'm dating this person because I'm going to marry them. It was more of a, I'm dating this person to see if it would work in the long run.
And that's, to me, that's more sensible, right? It's like, well, you got to get to know that person first.
Yeah.
Like you got to like, like the phrase like dating to the intention of marriage was like, or with the intention of marriage was such a mind-boggling thing to me, because it's like, how do you know you want to marry this person unless you go out on dates with them, right? Like unless you kind of get to know. I still have a friend to this day who tells me like, oh, I want to be friends with this girl first, so I get to know her before I go on dates with her, like before I actually, do like I guess dates in this case would be like one-on-one activities.
Yeah.
But it's like that's how you get to know somebody though. Like that's
and there's nothing wrong with being friends with somebody first,
yeah.
But there is kind of a line that you can cross where you or the other person doesn't see you as a potential relationship anymore.
Yeah.
And they just see you as just friends.
Yeah.
And, that may be when you first start talking to each other, and that could be, like, if you just want to be, like, friends for, like, a year or something.
Sure. Yeah, that's just good general dating advice, though,
yeah.
I feel like. But, man, even when I was a Christian, and I've talked about this before, I think, like, I always thought there was a lot of rules about Christian dating and stuff that were really just wacky.
Yeah.
Me. It didn't really like I was taught this idea of like guys had to have biblical manliness, like biblical manhood was something you had to express, and the woman she had to like be the best wife to you. She was your partner, but she was also like she had a role to play. You know what I mean? Like there was the relationship dynamic. They always said it was equal, but it definitely wasn't.
No, absolutely not. And I never really subscribed to that kind of thinking. Mm-hmm. I was just kind of like, well, I'm a pretty independent person, more or less, and if I want to do this with my job and then settle down, then that's what I'll do. And, It's just kind of been like, I think part of it was because I was raised just in such an open-minded family. And, we were always kind of told, religion has rules, but like it doesn't. And you can kind of interpret it in different ways. And I mean, I just kind of grew up thinking like everybody could interpret anything differently, and it doesn't really matter as long as you believe this.
Yeah, that's interesting because, again, I just, like, my mindset was, at least my family's mindset and the community I was part of was, they have to believe the same things you do, and if they don't, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And there was this term called missionary dating. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's this idea that a girl or guy is going to go out with someone who's either not as religious or maybe is in a different religion or has some other beliefs with the intention that they want to convert them so that they can become acceptable partners.
Yeah, I've heard about that. But I just think, trying to change somebody.
No, it was
any way.
Well, so like in the groups I was a part of, it was discouraged. It was like, hey, don't do this missionary dating thing. Like, don't try to date this person just so you can convert them.
Yeah.
Right. That's
good advice.
No. But there's a context to the advice though, Christy, and the context was no. This person needs to already believe what you believe. Right. They already have to have, and like, you want to find somebody that's compatible with you, but you also like, you're gonna have to expect differences in people. Right?
I mean, we don't believe exactly the same thing.
No.
And even if we were both Christian, I'm sure we would have disagreements on certain things.
Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, Christy, if you became a Christian tomorrow, that would be hard for me. I don't know what I would do. I really don't know what I would do.
Well, I don't think that's anything likely.
Yeah, I guess that's
I don't think that's going to happen.
I know there's stories of, Christians together and one of them becoming atheist and stuff like that. I wonder how often is the case if it's two atheists and one of them becomes a Christian. I guess, was it Lee Strobel? That's like his kind of story. But, who knows how true that is, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is a call-in show, so we should get to some calls here. We are going live right now. Please go ahead and call the number on screen if you are watching this live here on YouTube. Are you ready to talk to some people here,
Let's
Kristen?
go.
All right, cool. Let's go to, I want to say this is pronounced Hake in California. Hake, tell me if I'm pronouncing your name right.
Hi, so it's Hike.
Hike, what's up, Hike?
That was my guess, but I didn't want to say anything.
How's it going?
Yeah, how's it going, man? Tell me what's up.
Good. Yeah, so I wanted to generally talk about the idea of the free marketplace of ideas. Are you guys familiar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but go ahead and tell us your kind of definition of that.
Yeah, so I guess I view it as kind of let all ideas stand on their own merits, and the most rational ones will win out due to solely, like the merit of how good they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
Yeah, so is that...
Yeah, this is an interesting issue. I just want to comment on this real quick because, like, I'm seeing more and more conversations about this being taking place. Have you felt the same way, Hike? I feel like more and more people are talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think what it is, you've got the, like, Richard Spencer, like, is it okay to punch a Nazi kind of conversations going on? And this idea that human societies are inherently... will ultimately be rational and will ultimately become their best if we leave them to the free market. I don't know, because, like, if we're talking about Nazism, for example, like, Nazism was a thing and still is a thing and seems to be on the rise right now, right? Like, it seems that there's more and more people getting into it. So, like, I don't know if the free market idea, I mean, like, it seems like the most persuasive ideas. And when I say persuasive, I mean contextually, right? Like, like a Nazi ideology could be very persuasive to someone who's feeling disenfranchised or is having certain experiences that seem to match up with other people's experiences, right?
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree that I don't think it's definitely like a noble idea, like, make a great argument and you'll win anyone over. Mm-hmm. But I think that just doesn't work with the majority of humans. Like, you have to assume that if you do, subscribe to this idea of the free marketplace of ideas, you have to assume that the people involved in this discussion are, they're arguing in good faith and that they're exercising appropriate reason.
Yeah.
Which oftentimes people don't. Like, we're just animals who, function off of our basic emotional impulses. And I think, like, those often take precedence over what's rational.
Yeah. And, like, how many, like, economic theories, for example, haven't worked out in practice because humans haven't acted in, quote, as, quote, rational actors, right? Like, they're not making decisions that benefit themselves the most. And we do the same thing when we talk about these kinds of ideas. And yeah, like, I mean, there's tons of things, like the anti-vax movement, the flat earth movement. Again, I don't know the exact numbers between what these were like 20 years ago and what it's been like now. But I'll tell you what, more people seem to be talking about it. I don't think there was a flat earth conference 20 years ago. Maybe there was, but I certainly never heard of it, So it seems like it's, the free market of ideas. Like, I used to think that seems to be the case, but I'm not as convinced of that anymore. What do you think, Christy?
Well, I think, You have to think about how a lot of things are subjective. I think that rationality, while it seems like it would be kind of objective, I think some people see things as rational, and some people see those same things as irrational. And you got to think about, like, what's this person's background?
Yep.
And I think it has a lot to do with, like, you know, what their whole experience was as a whole, and they may not see something that is rational, like as rational.
Yeah, I agree. Hike, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So like when we say rational, what do we mean?
Yes.
Yeah, like what do we mean by rational?
What do we mean by rational? It's a fantastic. I see this a conversation happen with atheists and stuff too. Like, I think we make the mistake of saying, like, oh, we just need to be rational. Like, if everybody was just rational, we just need to think rationally about this. And we keep using this word that by itself really doesn't mean much. Unless we're like, it's only because we've gotten to the point that we call our ideas rational. What's going to seem rational to the people of today in the 21st century may not be seen rational a century or two from now. You know, if we make it that far, right? It's more contextual and subjective than what people might think, and that's a problem when we have conversations about this, and that's what gives kind of fodder to the people who are on what we would consider the other side of this conversation, right? The ones who we would consider having the ideas that we would call irrational, right? Because they would say, well, you know, it's all kind of subjective, right? I mean, this is what people who claim the postmodernists are taking over, right? Well, I mean, like, the postmodern view does have a place in the conversation, right? Where I am not of the type, by the way, to say that all truths are subjective, like there is no objective truths. But I will say it's much more complicated than what people give it credit for, right?
You know, when you think about it, you know, Christians or evangelical Christians may think that the cosmological argument is rational, but we don't.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So, like, logic can be abused. Logic can definitely be twisted in nefarious ways to bring people to conclusions that otherwise we wouldn't call true, right? But I don't know. I don't have any solutions, though. Hike, do you have any solutions to kind of this problem, or any ideas on that?
Well, I mean, so when we talk about rationality, can we agree that it is based on, like, certain logical, I guess, axioms that we've agreed upon?
Yeah.
Or can rationality be, can opinions be involved with the rationality?
Man, you know,
that's a tough question.
Yeah, I see. I'm not a philosopher.
Yeah.
Like here's an example. Like,
yeah.
Let's say there's two restaurants and one of them has 5 stars and people love it, and the food, everyone who eats there loves the food. And there's another one that uses bad quality ingredients, service is terrible, everything about it is bad. And then one person says, hey, this bad restaurant, I like it better. Can you rationally argue that they're wrong? Can you?
No.
Would it be rational?
So yeah, if they say they like it better, I couldn't say that they're wrong.
Yeah, because that's an opinion.
Right. So, like, yeah.
Oh, sorry. What if they say? What if they just say it's better? It's a better restaurant.
Oh yeah. So that's different, right? So if that's one of those things where you have to agree upon the metrics by which you're measuring something, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, if we all know what the rules of chess are, then yeah, we could actually define what the best move would be in playing a game of chess, right, or at least get close to it, right? And people like restaurants for different reasons. They might like certain kinds of foods better than others. They might like certain kinds of atmospheres better than others, or kinds of waiters and waitresses and people who serve food. So,
right.
Yeah, until we figure out what all the metrics we're kind of gauging, then yeah, I agree. It would be kind of hard to make that kind of decision.
For sure.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you think that how much we value those individual metrics is subjective, or is there any rational way to support how valuable they are?
That's
like, what if I really like the color of the tables at the bad restaurant, and I say that is a more important metric than anything else? Is that still just some sort of subjective opinion that can't be rationalized?
I think it's subjective to the individual.
Well, so I think I would say if you're creating a personal standard that falls outside of the scope of most people's understanding of what when we use the words better or worse in description of something, especially when we're talking about restaurants. I mean, 99% of the people you talk to aren't going to pick a restaurant over another one because of the color blue. That one person, I mean, they might, you know, when we say that it's better, what I think what we're really saying is they personally want to go there more than any other restaurant, right? I mean, in this certain context, and that again, that could be a truth in there, right? If by better we mean preference, then yes, we could make that decision. But if we're taking better and we're just trying to rip it out to the abstract as much as possible, I don't think so. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So, but Hike, man, that's a great question, and I think it's an important one to discuss as well. You know, this idea of how we figure out what's rational, how we figure out what we as a society want for ourselves as individuals. I mean, this is the stuff I wish people talked about more on the daily, right? Outside of this stuff on shows on the internet, right? Have any other final comments you want to make?
I have a comment.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Well, go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to say, like, I feel like I'm going to be racking my brain about this for the next, 3 days.
I got you. I'll send you some books if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
Stuff. But anyway, go for it. Hike.
Yeah. So, I guess the more practical reason for talking about this is, are there certain ideas that we should ban due to them being irrational yet being highly infectious and dangerous?
Because, go on.
No, you go ahead.
No, because here's the thing, I'm of a mixed mind about this.
Yeah.
I used to be, I think a few years ago, if you asked me this, I would say, yeah, free speech all the way, dude. Yeah, go for it. But then now it's like, wow, there's some real harms to some of these ideas. But, I mean, again, who am I to say what can and can't be said? I can definitely say that ideas do harm people, and I myself try to limit the speech that comes out of my mouth, and at least close associates and stuff. I want to kind of minimize the way they talk about things. I try to talk to my parents about hey, you can't say the stuff you do about gay people around my friends, right? Because some of them are gay, and that's an action that I take, and I don't know if you'd call that an act of censorship on my part, but definitely it is me trying to influence other people's behavior, right? I think we definitely want to change other people's behavior, and whether we make a legal mandate about it, I don't know. It seems like there's pros and cons. I don't have an opinion either way. I'm still kind of, there's a lot for me to think about it. What do you think, Christy?
I'm totally lost.
So I guess, we're talking about whether or not we should kind of mandate ideas to be banned, whether that's from discussion or from just
spreading them.
Yeah, spreading them or organizing around, right?
I really think that, we do have free speech.
Yeah.
And free speech is fine. But I think when there are calls to violence, any kind of violent behaviors, anything like that, calls of hatred to another group of people or something like that, I think that's where the free speech ends. And we have to remember that freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom of it does not mean freedom of consequences.
Yeah, and so that's
and so that means that people can argue back and forth. We just have to figure out which one is.
Yeah, that's a good point. So calls of violence and sexual harassment, right? I wouldn't want people to say, and there people always say oh, you can't say fire in a movie theater, and that's and another thing to consider too is this studio wouldn't be here if AXP, Atheist Experience, didn't start going on public access over 20 years ago now, at a time where that was a new thing, and there was a lot of people who didn't want that out there, right? And so there could have been powers that be that would have shut something like that down, and we wouldn't have the productions like we have here today. And that's something to think about too, especially as atheists, right? We are often the minority wherever we go, at least in the United States. and most of the world. And so we would want our speech to not be as limited, just because other people seriously find our ideas pretty dangerous, right? Yeah. So.
But couldn't you rationally argue that they're wrong?
Could we rationally argue that our ideas aren't dangerous as atheists?
Yeah. Like, you can rationally support, that atheism is, or that the religion is harmful, so everyone should be atheist. Like, that's a fairly rational position, right?
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if I would say it's rational.
Yeah.
I think that everybody should have the freedom to decide what they want to believe. And
well, yeah, I would. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just kind of talking. Go for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, it would be great if we gave everyone the freedom to think however they want, and then it would be even better if they came to to rational conclusions. But like, religion is not rational. I'm sure you guys listen to the Atheist Experience and all that, and most arguments for religion are not rational. Like, that's something we can agree upon, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say at least most, or a large number of them. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So now we have a bunch of people, a majority of people, who have an almost objectively irrational belief, which is also harmful. So do we have any duty to prevent them from believing this thing? And I guess you could say that your show and the ACA in general does kind of work towards this goal. Mm-hmm. But can you take it a step further and say, make it illegal to be religious or whatever, or anything like that?
It's a wonderful question.
Well, no, because, Congress shall make no law affecting establishment of religion.
Well, yes, but like, hey, so if we're talking about hypothetical worlds, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking about a better society, I mean, like, that's a tough one. And I can't say I haven't thought about this, because I have. Mm-hmm. Because religion encompasses such a wide array of beliefs with a spectrum of harmfulness, to call religion as a whole, I mean, so like, there are some, because if we're talking about practice, right, like, I would say that people do have better benefits from religion sometimes than atheists do.
Yeah.
Like, if you're an atheist, I guess that only works though in the context that atheists are the minority. I guess if we're talking about in a world where atheists would become more the majority, and then saying, should religious ideas be banned? I don't know, because then I want to make a free marketplace of ideas. Well, the rational idea will win out kind of argument, right?
Yeah.
But like, I'm just saying how that's not a good way to always do things. Yeah, I don't know. What's your opinion on this?
I mean, I don't know. Like, a lot of people, if you ever suggest the idea of like banning ideas, they'll like take up arms against you, sure, and you're trying to like restrict their freedoms or whatever. As like, we have a very visceral reaction against that. But and I do agree that it is possible for like let's say a government that starts banning ideas, for that to get out of hand. But on the other hand, like, I feel like certain ideas just have absolutely no value in society. And you obviously can't stop people from believing something, but you can stop them from spreading it. You can, deplatform them. You can stop them from having a speech or whatever.
Hi, give me an example of an idea that has no value in our society, so we have something to think about.
I mean, I think any belief, any idea that involves, God or religion, like, I feel like I just have never heard of a rational argument for religion. And I don't think it all. I think also it doesn't give anything of value to believe in a God.
Ooh. See, I might disagree with you a little bit
same
there.
Here.
Only because now the idea of God doesn't give value to me now, but to a Christian, the idea of God arguably could give value, right?
Comfort,
comfort,
people
and a narrative, right? Like
community,
a life stance,
sense of community, for sure.
Let me reiterate.
Sure.
I think there's no value that religion gives that can't be gotten from some other more rational perspective.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So there's also, I mean, that comes with the assumption. Do you think, Hike, that everybody is capable of being irreligious, of not having some kind of religious belief?
I don't think there's anything stopping any person from being irreligious, especially if they're like, 60 years old and they've been a devout Christian their whole lives, then they will literally never convert. But I think any human being, if they're raised in the right way, can be irreligious.
But I also think, though, Hike, that if we're assuming that most religious ideas are irrational, and we know that human beings are, for the most part, irrational, it's almost impossible to prevent religious ideas from forming in some way or another. Yeah, it seems like it's always going to happen, right?
Well, so why are there people who we would consider rational who don't believe in religion? Like, is there anything that sets them apart, like inherently in their biology, from people who are religious?
I think on some level, that's a good question too. Like, how much does biology itself play into belief? We definitely, any studies I've seen have indicated that, education is a huge part of that. We definitely know that economic circumstances too. Most people who are atheists, they come from a part of the world where they can kind of, almost in a sense, afford to be atheists, and I'm using that very loosely, but only in the sense that, a better economic standing means better access to education. And I don't think it's any secret to say that the lower your economic standing in the world, the more religious you probably are on a statistical sense. So I don't know. It almost seems like we would have to solve problems of education and economy in order to prevent people from. And I don't know on a worldwide scale if that's possible.
Yeah. I definitely do think that there are some, inherent things that we're born with in terms of our psychology that do make us more predisposed to follow religion or, be a flat earther or whatever it may be.
I think so too.
But I think that I'm not sure whether anyone is, absolutely barred from being an atheist or just being a rational person in general. I don't know if the effect of our biology is that much stronger than the effect of our upbringing.
Yeah, to me,
it's a nature versus nurture kind of
nature
question.
Versus nurture kind of question, which a lot of those questions we just don't have very clear answers to. I will say this, as someone who converted, right? I would not have had that conversion experience if not for my education and if not for my background. Absolutely. Would not at all. I consider my atheism to be a privilege to some extent. Because I was able to live in a society that was able to support me going to college and support enough leisure time for me to read books and watch videos and kind of figure this out for myself. Now, had I already started with no religious beliefs, I don't know, because that's a different me. But yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. I think we do need to get to our next callers. But hi, thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah.
Dude, that was
thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Fantastic conversations. And I would love to hear from you again.
Absolutely. I'll definitely be calling. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
See ya. All right.
What'd you think?
Well, a lot of it kind of went over my head at the beginning, but then once we kind of got into things and started talking, we
covered a lot there.
Yeah.
We went all over the place.
Yeah. The gears are turning in my head. Mm-hmm. I have a lot to think about tonight. A lot of things to keep me awake. Yeah.
These whole, ideas about free speech, ideas about belief, ideas about what's allowed and what's not allowed. They're not clean cut. They're not simple. I wish I could be one of those guys who goes on the radio and be like, yes, we need to do X, Y, and Z, and this is the plan going forward. I'm just not that kind of person.
Yeah.
I
think a lot of those topics are kind of gray areas.
Yeah. And, I think people like people who are confident in their conclusions, right? And who are saying we absolutely need to do this. This is the answer. And I think there's a certain draw to those kinds of people because people are this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. He brought this evidence forward and this argument forward. And I think I'm kind of more convinced of that, But I don't know. Yeah, it's a lot.
You want to go to a new caller?
I do want to go to new call. This is a really thoughtful evening. I want to go to Sassy in New Hampshire.
Hey,
Sassy,
girl.
what's up?
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Christy.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Sassy and I are Twitter
well,
friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to make a clarification, you are bisexual, right, Christy?
That I am. Surprise, everyone.
No, I just want to be sure before I went on. So I've noticed that a lot of times when someone who is straight is in a relationship with someone from the LGBTQ community, a lot of people think that the person who's straight is gay. And that is like totally not, it's not true. So I was wondering what your thoughts are, Dan, because you're straight, right?
Allegedly, yeah. No, I am.
Allegedly.
Right? Some people would think otherwise. But yes, I do identify as straight. It's a good question, Sassy. So our relationship is kind of interesting because Christy didn't realize that she was bisexual until, if you could, Sassy, if you have me playing in the background, if you could mute that for me, that'd be great. Christy didn't realize she was bisexual until after we started dating.
Yeah, let me tell this story.
Yeah, you should tell that story.
You know, I say I didn't realize, but I really did know for a very long time, but I just pushed it down and repressed it so hard that I just convinced myself that I was straight. And I thought that a lot of the thoughts that I was having were normal for like a straight person. And they weren't. And it took, there was a time in this past October when I was really doing a lot of thinking about who I am and what I want out of life and all of that. And I had some questions kind of come up, and they really kind of made me think about, well, is this what I am? Am I really this? And I realized I wasn't really being honest with myself, and I wasn't accepting myself for who I actually am and for, who I'm attracted to. And, I told Dan in mid-October, and he was like,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was pretty early on in us dating and stuff.
Yeah.
And this was a new thing for me too. Like, obviously I'd never had anybody really come out to me in a relationship before.
Yeah, and you were the first person that I came out to other than myself.
Yeah, and so like what's really interesting is I felt like I could actually be a really good support for you because I was kind of involved in these communities. Like I've been an ally for the LGBT community for a while now, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, like let's talk about this. Like, let's deconstruct this together. Like, where are you at right now? I would say only because I knew so many people who were like this, and because I had read so many stories and read what was healthy and what wasn't, that the transition of that happening was really clean for us.
Oh, for sure,
I can see how another straight person who isn't really involved in those communities, isn't knowledgeable about those experiences and kind of what that's like, could be intimidated by that. Because when somebody is coming at you and say, oh, I also like these other people now, then that's where some people's minds go. They're like, oh, well, are you thinking about these people while you're, with me and stuff like that? And I didn't. I mean, so one, like, well, you would already be doing that anyway. Like, I can't stop you. Like, obviously, this is something that's been happening your whole life.
Yes.
Right? At least from what you described it.
Correct.
So, there's that to think about. But also, like, just because I like girls in general doesn't mean that I'm just going to, like, go off and, do something without your consent, right?
Yeah.
So,
even though I'm bisexual, I am also monogamous.
Yeah.
And so when I am with somebody, I'm not with anybody else really.
Well, yeah, that's something you desire, and like that's kind of how we constructed our relationship.
Yeah, and honestly, Dan was a really good support to me. And like he said, if I had not come out to you, I mean, I have plenty of LGBTQ friends, but I wouldn't have had as many people, or as I wouldn't have had one person that I could have just, gushed all of my feelings out at, that would just sit there and listen and be like, okay, now tell me what you're feeling about this, other than like a therapist. But and
you know what? We worked it out.
We did, yeah.
And now we're here, and it's great.
Our relationship is stronger for coming out from that.
And you can do it too, folks. So that's my message.
Yeah. Only if you think you're safe to do that.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, it gets annoying, like hearing or reading other people. Just thinks that any straight person who ends up being with either someone's bisexual, pansexual, or however else they identify, that straight person's gay. And I said to myself, no, that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's also this misconception that bisexual people in straight passing relationships are actually straight, or in homosexual relationships are actually gay, and that's not true. It just has to do with who you're attracted to. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. Red and blue is a mix as it makes purple. Mm-hmm. Purple is still purple.
Well, here's what
it's not sometimes red and sometimes blue.
What I think it boils down to is people are uncomfortable with the idea of their partners being attracted to other people or having feelings towards other people.
Yeah.
I think I think we work with the foundation that, hey, like, I can still look at somebody and say, oh, that person is very beautiful. Like, that's a very attractive person. And you can do the same thing, but we still have our commitments to each other. Like, we still, organize our relationships like that because we're honest about that. And I think if most people were honest with themselves, they'd say, yeah, even though I've been married to this person for 10, 15 years, whatever, like, they could still see someone and say, like, oh, yes, this... I could see how this. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, Dan goes around and he says, "No, I don't. Yes, this person is."
No. Don't get it twisted. I'm just saying, it's healthier to communicate more honestly on these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, we can't just pretend that attractive people don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
We can find people attractive, and we don't have to talk about it with each other. We can think it. Yeah. We can see someone and say, "Oh, that person is hot," or whatever. But we're still with each other, and we have that commitment to each other, so we don't have to go off and go be with that other person.
Right. So, there you go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
Does that answer your question, Sassy? Did I cover all the details in depth?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for calling, Sassy. Really appreciate it. And please call back again. I'd love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
I love Sassy. Sassy's the best.
Sassy's really cool. This is interesting because I'm not used to this show being like a dating advice. Like,
a while back, we talked about starting a dating advice podcast.
But then I was like, well, we haven't been in a relationship.
Yeah, we'd only been in a relationship for like 6 months.
What kind of like, being like, oh, these guys are like super young. Like,
nobody would take us seriously.
Yeah, why would we? That sounds so like, how full of ourselves would we be if we thought like, yeah, our relationship is super awesome. We need everybody to work exactly like the way we do.
Yes.
Right? Like, but anyway, I'm glad Sassy brought that up though, actually, because. It's a thing that happens. It happened to us.
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've also never been the type to be super jealous either.
Yeah, and that's really helpful for me because I was the type that was jealous before we started dating.
Yeah, it's a personality thing that plays into it too. But like, all we did was really talk about it.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot. And anytime I was having some issues, I would come to Dan and I would tell him what was going on, and we would talk through it. And communication is just so important in any kind of relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or anything else.
Yeah I wish other people would feel the same way about that, but unfortunately there's a lot of relationships that do end because they can't figure that stuff out. And that's if that's something that's happened to you, I'm sorry for you, and I hope you find someone who you can work that out with.
And who will accept you for who you are and love you for who you are.
Absolutely. Well, let's go on to another caller, and we still have lots of open lines, folks. So if you want to call in, you still have the chance. Go ahead and call in on the number on screen. I want to get to Tim in Washington. Tim, what's up?
Hey, Tim.
Hey, how are you guys?
Doing really good, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. it's been an interesting couple of weeks for me. So
cool. I hear an audio source in the background. If you could mute that for us, that'd be great. But yeah, tell me what's up. Tell me what's going on.
I was just calling. I called last week, and my phone kind of messed up on me, so I had to hang up and all of that. But I wanted to talk about when I was a fundamentalist Christian and was a ex-gay minister, and we used to hold Coming Out of Homosexuality Day rallies.
Oh, I remember this. Yes. I was watching in the chat. Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm so excited to talk about this, man.
I saw this, so I have a little thing that tells me who's calling in and what they want to call about. I saw this in the call log, and I was so sad when your call dropped and we didn't get to you, because I was like, what is that guy's story about? So yes, please.
I'm so glad you called this.
Tell me about this, man, because I have no idea what that's like.
Yeah.
First of all, it was really strange being a fundamentalist Pentecostal Christian who was gay and then suddenly was told to go straight because God wanted me to be straight, and that he would change me and that he could change others, and that suddenly I found myself as a minister and being a part of these rallies in Seattle, and saying, you can change, God can change you. And, that doesn't work.
Well, do you think that you were...
Here to say.
Do you think that even though, did you think you were happier, than you were before when you, became straight? Or do you think, it just made things worse? Obviously you've changed.
Worse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just having to pretend to be something you're not.
It was absolutely miserable, and I'm suffering from PTSD, partly because of that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Even now, and because I had to pretend that I was in love with my ex-wife, and I had to pretend that God was changing me, and it doesn't happen, and it makes me so sad when I hear all these stories about how happy people are, and it's like, well, you might be bi, which makes you happy, and that's okay, but don't tell a gay guy that he's going to go straight, because that's just not what happens. You can change your behavior, but you can't change your orientation.
100%, I agree with you.
Tim,
absolutely.
I was this was months ago, but I was having a conversation with a pastor friend I know. And we were talking about this phenomenon of the ex-gay ministries and stuff like that. And we were talking about one guy in particular, this guy who claimed that he was gay and then he got healed and stuff. And this pastor asked me a question. He's like, "Are you saying that this guy is a liar and that he's just conned all these people in this story and stuff?" And it's hard for me to say that the guy is actively lying. I'm not sure if it's a lying thing. It almost seems like a confused kind of thing. Or, what is your take? Because you've been in that world. I've not been in that world. Are there people who lie about these experiences? Are there people who you think just are misunderstanding things? Or what do you think the majority of cases are like that?
I can only talk about myself in that respect. And I was flat out lying. I was married, and for the last, 3-4 years of my marriage, I was stepping out, and I was having NSA trysts with guys every chance I could get. I was just flat out lying, and it's not something to be proud of. It's just what happened.
Yeah.
And so I can only talk about myself. I was lying. I wasn't confused. I wasn't brainwashed or anything. I was lying because I thought I needed to. And that's all I can say. I don't know about these other guys. And like I said, maybe some of them are bi and they just chose to suppress the attractions to men in order to live their lives for God.
Let me tell you something, Tim. Suppressing an attraction for someone kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that you've been there, obviously, because you had to pretend you were straight for a really long time. Tim, let me ask you, did you ever go through like conversion therapy or anything like that? What led you to basically go straight?
It was mainly just all my own work. I did have pastors that helped me. When I first started with ex-gay ministry, they gave me the tools to use. I went through the Living Waters program that was written by Andrew Comiskey, and he was a member of the Exodus International, and he wrote the Living Waters and gave us all tools. If you're walking around in the summertime and you find yourself being attracted to the shirtless men, then start singing some hymns or pray to God or,
oh my gosh,
all of that. It was some bizarre stuff.
Wow.
And, reparative therapy to a certain degree, but not so much as like, gay camp or anything that some of these teenagers even today are forced to be a part of.
See, there's a thing where we were talking about High Girl about like what we would ban, what we wouldn't ban, and that's interesting because if I made the point, and I have to concede my own point here that I said that religion does help people and bring value to you, but if you're lying to yourself, because I know when I was a Christian, I also lied to people about how good my religion was doing for me. Like,
me too. Yeah.
And so,
absolutely.
Like that's another element to it too. But because there have been these gay conversion therapies have been banned in certain places. I think it was like Maryland. It was banned somewhere and stuff. Yeah. And like, there's been actions to. I know in Canada there was places too, if not everywhere. And
yes, we here in Washington have also banned.
Yeah,
yes.
And so like that's one of those things where it's like, I would agree with not making it happen because I only see harm come out of that. I don't really see as much good. And it sounds like the people who say they got good were lying. Like, and you keep having these stories of people coming out, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I was always told that, I was going to bring down the wrath of God if I stepped into being gay, and that I was going to be disease-ridden and everything. And just as a side note, I've gotten all of my blood work back. I just recently got tested, and I'm negative for just about everything.
Oh, good.
And as a 54-year-old, I even have normal cholesterol, and my liver and kidneys are functioning normal. So God isn't punishing me health-wise anyway.
Yeah. That sucks that it sounds like fear was a real part of keeping you doing what you were doing, be it social or like supernatural. I know I felt fear too, but I can't imagine what it was like for you, because that's such a core part of who you are, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that that's what the church does anyway. I mean, how often have we all heard the fear of God? And, the church tends to play upon all of our fears. My fear was that I was going to become HIV positive and die of AIDS and die of this horrible, debilitating disease. And, they play to fear. That's its very nature, really.
Yeah. I remember Christy and I actually watched the movie Dallas Buyers Club a few months ago. And I had known the stories of that time of the 80s and 90s when this stuff was at an epidemic, when we're talking about AIDS and stuff like that. But it was so hard to see that played out, even just as an acting form, because it's like, wow, these were the lives of people that really were being harassed on all fronts, that like they weren't being accepted by even the closest people in their family and stuff like that. And the fact that still goes on today is just, it breaks my heart. And like organizations like the Exodus International, is that what it's called? Yeah, Exodus International. That
yes.
that are still around, that are still kind of perpetuating that fear. Just like, that's so frustrating. I wish there was more we could do. I mean, what's your opinion on this, Tim? Is there more we as the rest of us could do about this kind of stuff, or what do you suggest?
My suggestion is, first of all, we need to continue to make the LGBTQ community, or as our friend Jimmy, Mr. Atheist, says, the GRSM community, we need to normalize ourselves. We need to say we are out and we are people, and we are willing to be an active, vital part of our communities. And we need to stop things like the NIFB from doing Make America Straight Again, or the Boston Straight Pride Parade. We need to stop those things because heterosexuality is already normative. We already know that. We already know that there are white straight boys out there that have it easy. But you know, our pride is all about the fact that we've made strides after decades, if not hundreds of years, of being thrown into the fringe of society and forced into the closet.
Yeah.
So really, we just need to continue where we're heading and become accepted, normative members of our society.
And you know, like, I even hear the state people like, oh, well, you know, gay people can get married today. Like, they don't have it as hard anymore, and all this kind of like BS. It's just like, man, like, look, I get it. It's cheesy sometimes when some corporation changes their logo to like a rainbow color, right? But like, that's really meaningful to a lot of people, and just to stand in solidarity with people who have been outcasted and who have rejected that. I know, as at least as an atheist, that puts me in just the one minority camp. And my experiences with that coming out and stuff are bad enough. Adding on to the fact that being LGBT, that just doubles it, if not more so, right? And I agree with you, Tim. It's got to be something where we just continue to see that we fight for what's right. And if you are going to that rally, by the way, please do be careful. We're talking about the one, the counter protests and stuff for the Make America Straight Again stuff that's happening. But yeah, Tim, I just gotta say thanks so much for. Oh, Christy had something. Yeah, go for it, Christy.
Before you hang up.
Yeah.
So Tim, I'm gonna make this conversation a little bit longer than Dan probably expected.
Okay.
But I'm from the South. I'm from Alabama.
Yeah.
And I see that you're from Washington. So what is the environment like up in Washington? Are people more accepting of you? You know, are there a lot more? Can you be as open as you would like to be, or are people kind of not?
Well, we're in the Pacific Northwest, so Oregon, Washington, Northern California, not so much Idaho, but we are gratefully more accepted than, say, in Alabama or Mississippi. We have Seattle, we have Portland, very, very open and welcoming, huge cities. And I grew up in a very small town. I call it North Arkansas. But even my little town of Longview is much more accepting than I hear stories in the from the South. So we are a very accepting state, and we were I think number 14 to vote in marriage equality, and actually our entire state voted it in. It wasn't something that was done via the courts or via legislation. It was literally voted in 2 years before the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you have a community and you have a place to be where you can be that as open as you are, and you can be yourself. Because where I'm from, I kind of have to be careful about it.
Yeah.
Because in Alabama, it's still illegal to fire someone for being gay.
Yeah. Although.
Or it is still legal. Sorry.
Yeah. Although I've heard Supreme Court decisions recently making changes to that, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is great.
But statewide.
Yeah. And also, Tim, I'm glad you have a call-in show community that you can call into as well. Thanks again for calling in, man.
For sure. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah. Can't wait to hear from you again.
All right. Looking forward to it.
See you,
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim has called into the show before, and I was just shocked the first time I heard his story. And he's in the pagan world now. That's kind of where he's kind of ended up, which is interesting in itself. But just like being in the ex-gay ministry thing is its own subculture, is its own thing that not a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I know I was not, even as an atheist, it's foreign to me in a lot of ways, only because it only involves a certain group of people going through certain experiences and stuff like that, you know. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This is the part where you add commentary to what I'm saying, Christy. I don't know if you've ever been on one of these kinds of shows before, but that's kind of how it works.
Okay.
Come on, I'm being funny. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I want to talk about veganism with Sam.
Oh my goodness. You want to talk to Sam about veganism?
Sure. Let's go.
With my audience, there's going to be a riot in the chats right now if we talk about veganism.
You know what? That's okay.
All right.
I can't see the chat.
Tell you what, we're not talk heathen, man. We'll talk about veganism on here. Let's go for it. Sam in Ohio, what's up, man? Hello, Sam. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hey,
we can hear
there
you.
you
What's
are.
up, Sam?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Pretty good. What did you want to talk to us about today?
Okay, so I have some anti-veganism arguments I'd like to try out.
Oh, man. I'm excited to hear this. This is interesting.
Anti-veganism arguments. Let's hear it.
All right, so let's see. In order to be a vegan, you would have to believe that human beings are not better than or superior than animals. Is that right? Would you agree with that?
I'm not a vegan. So,
I'm also not a vegan.
So I don't. It's hard for me to say whether I would. I think that makes sense on some level. Yeah, I think most vegans would say that we shouldn't necessarily view ourselves as superior to other animals. Yeah. To an extent. Yeah.
So we're making a moral judgment about ourselves in our consumption of meat.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying that we are not better than the animals, that we are not superior than them, so that we should not be consuming them or something like that. And it occurs to me that other animals...
Uh-oh. Sam, you're breaking up with us just a little bit. Oh, no. All right, Sam, I'm going to go ahead and drop the call right now. Hopefully, if you want to try to call back, we can maybe get you back on here. Speaking of veganism, I got you to try a vegan meal with me this week.
We did. We tried a vegan sandwich.
Yes.
It was very interesting. You know, I could see, I don't know, I'm a picky eater, so it was a little bit like, oh, I'm not really sure about this, but it was similar to meat, but it definitely wasn't the same thing. And that's what a lot of vegans will say. They're like, oh yeah, it's close enough, but it's not, you know, it's obviously not the same thing. But
yeah, so like I have low-key been trying to pressure Christy into becoming a vegan only because I want to see what that would happen if you were a vegan and I wasn't, and then we have that discussion. Well, if you could convince me to be a vegan.
oh my god,
Yeah,
this is something I was not aware of. I didn't know that you were trying to.
We definitely talked about this.
Well, I didn't know you were trying to influence my
Well, I just want
my eating choices.
I just want you to be open-minded about it.
Well, absolutely, I am. You remember that time that I tried vegan chicken nuggets? They're actually really, really good. They taste almost exactly the same.
I don't know.
It's crazy.
I don't know about vegan chicken nuggets.
Okay, but I had them, and I told you about them. I had an all-vegan meal at one time,
Yeah.
like at my apartment.
You'd have to put some special sauce on there or something.
I put ketchup on it.
Okay. Well, maybe
Yeah.
if you send in your great vegan chicken nugget recipes at truth@atheist-community.org.
Send in all of your vegan recipes to my Twitter as well.
For sure. Okay.
That'd be pretty cool.
I want to go to Rachel in Ohio now while we're waiting for Sam to call back. Rachel, can you hear us?
I can hear you. How's it going?
Hey, how's it
Rachel.
going, Rachel?
Pretty good. I was actually on the show a few weeks back. You may have remembered me as X-Cult Baby.
Oh, it's X-Call, baby. What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
What's up? Are we gonna do that now? Okay.
I miss you guys.
Oh yeah.
We miss you.
Yeah. So okay, do you want to talk? This is the funniest thing that I've ever seen typed in a phone description ever, or gotta be top 5. It says pedophiles who are not perps. You want to
Right.
talk to us about pedophiles who are not perps?
Right. So this is an interesting conversation that I have had. There are people, obviously, who are attracted to children, which is terrible. There are some people, though, who are pedophiles who realize that this is terrible. Obviously. I mean, it's obviously terrible. But they don't want to harm children. They realize that it's terrible. And the thing is, they can't get any help because there aren't really any psychologists who are trained to deal with that particular issue.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting phenomenon.
So basically, what do they do?
Right. So it's this idea that, we have people who are attracted to children and openly admit that, but who either, one, don't want to be, or two, just don't want to act on it, or we kind of use that same language that a Christian would, talking about like gay and lesbian relationships and stuff. But like in a way, it does cross some similar lines. I think the difference and the primary thing that people discuss when talking about this stuff is, of course, that children can't really give consent in having these relationships, and that's what kind of brings the harm. And
exactly.
And there is a stereotype in this country and other places of people who are attracted to children want to bring harm to kids. And apparently, I mean, I've read heartbreaking stories of people saying like, yes, this is the attraction I have, but I don't want anything to do with it. Like, this is just the way that my brain is wired and stuff. And that's really hard to hear.
And there are a lot of people
Go on.
who are themselves molested as children that come to have this, same kind of psychological problem later on in life. But yeah, like I said, there's not many places where they can turn to for help because there are so few psychological professionals who are trained in this area.
Yeah, and it's like, what do we do for these people? I mean, I think for one, being as educated and nuanced on this topic as we can be is absolutely necessary. Unfortunately, this is a really uncomfortable conversation to have with a lot of people, especially when you use words like pedophile, which is it's inflammatory for people. And
it does imply that a crime has already been committed.
Yes, it does.
There's a bad connotation with that word.
And there is a difference between someone who has attractions to someone and someone who has committed a crime against another human being. And I'm glad you pointed out that distinction, Rachel. It's a tough subject to talk about. I think like what we're doing now, as long as we're informing people to say like, hey, these people do exist and they're just trying to get by in the world, and they're letting you know about something that's very deep and very personal to them, hopefully can arouse a sense of sensitivity to the issue enough. Unfortunately, we don't live in a world like that right now, and a lot of these conversations kind of get said in hushed tones because people are afraid of the consequences that come out of it.
Yeah. Right. I mean, that could lead to complete like social shunning.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not the type to shun people.
Yeah. I think I would have a lot of problems with it, but if somebody is trying to get some help, and if there was any way that I could be of help.
Now, of course, there are some people who do bring out the arguments to say like, oh, well, this is my natural inclination and stuff, and it's like they don't want help with it almost because that would be changing a part of who they are. Yeah. And that's a really hard thought to have. Because
it's a similar discussion as like saying that I need help.
Yes. And again, like the only reason why there should be concern here is because we are talking about children. We are talking about human beings who cannot give consent. The biggest difference with LGBT relationships in general is that it's between two consenting adults who are doing their thing. We just, as long as I think we make that distinction very clear to everybody involved, then it becomes just, because, you know, there is a lot of fundamentalists who are against LGBT people who are making the slippery slope argument, who are saying, well, if we allow men and men to be together and women and women to be together, then what's going to stop children and adults? And, well, it's that consent thing, even though, you know, like legal definitions of how consent is given are going to vary by region, right? You know, your age does matter in the country that you live in for how legal cases are determined in a lot of this stuff, which is another conversation too. Anyway, we've talked a lot about this, Rachel. What do you have to add?
The only thing I would add, of course, I totally agree with everything you said about consent, because that's really the major difference when people are talking about, pedophiles and gays are basically the same thing.
Yeah, that's the worst.
But I had an interesting discussion about this with my fiance, and I don't know if it was him who did the paper, but somebody when he was in college did this paper about specifically about child pornography and how in some place or something it was legal for there to be child pornography that didn't use an actual human model. Like it could be digitally rendered or drawn, but as long as there was no actual human models being used. And the idea behind it was, well, there aren't a lot of therapists who are specialized for this specific problem, so there's not a lot of places that people like this can go to get help. And B, if the porn that they're using to let out this, you know, sexual desire or whatever is not hurting any actual physical people, that's still better than, you know, obviously actual child pornography that uses children. Like, of course, it's still disgusting and horrible, but there's something to be said for at least no actual child is getting hurt. And I thought that was an interesting argument. I'm not 100% sure that I agree with it, but I wanted to get your thoughts as well.
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about. I'd have to sleep on that, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
Tough questions.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to think about with that. You know, if there's not an actual person involved, does that mean it's better? You know.
Yeah, and you know, like the production of, if we're talking about porn in general, there are like ethical arguments with the problems of like the porn industry and stuff, and how that in itself is unethical. But we're almost not talking about that. We're almost talking about digital creations where ostensibly no human being is harmed in its actual creation. I think if you were to argue against that, you would have to make an argument saying, well, the consumption of this porn, the use of this porn could lead to harm. And I don't think that's not really an argument I'm necessarily willing to defend or go up against necessarily. But I imagine people who are having these kinds of discussions, that's kind of the avenue they would want to explore a bit more. I'm having trouble. I mean, it gets real messy real quick. But I'm glad that you're bringing this up, Rachel, because it's something. Again, it's just not really talked about a whole lot. And maybe it doesn't need to be talked about for most people's lives, right? I mean, certainly if I didn't have this conversation, you know, my life is going to go on fine. But there are people who this affects and who get affected by it, right? So so it sounds like you're not entirely convinced one way or the other either, right, Rachel?
I'm not, because I haven't done a whole lot of research on this topic myself, enough to formulate a nuanced and well-researched opinion. But, and obviously I don't expect you guys to have either.
Yeah.
But it was something that I thought of that was, or it's something that I can't have conversations with just anybody about this, but it's kind of like you said, it's a topic that affects real people. But it may not affect you, so it's not something that's talked about. And obviously, it's a very sore subject, very uncomfortable subject. And when you bring religion into it, and you have all these people who are like Catholic priests, you know, who are very sexually repressed, and some people have posited that perhaps the sexual repression creates pedophilia where it otherwise would not have been. Some people say, oh, pedophiles go into these roles because they know they will have power over children. There's so much that we don't know about this topic. There's much that hasn't really been confirmed. Not to say that it hasn't been studied, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. So yeah, I just thought that it's an interesting thing to think about, and it's an important topic that not a lot of people talk about.
Mm-hmm. I think the important thing here in going in conversations like this moving forward is just listening. I think part of the reason why a lot of these kinds of people in society are marginalized are in some ways because they didn't get the chance to talk about their experiences with things. And I'm talking about people who have attractions to children, right? Like, if it is something that they are born with and that they can't control, then we have to treat it with the sensitivity that it deserves. Whether what that means legislatively, what that means socially, what that means in personal relationships, I'm not sure. All I can say is we do need to listen more in order to make the best decisions. Because if we're not listening, if we're just calling people names, then we're not going to get anywhere. And the problems that you and I would want to solve that come from these situations, this area of topic, aren't going to get solved either, right? So that's all I got to say on it. Thanks for calling, Rachel. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. And it was nice to talk to you guys again.
Yeah.
You guys are so cute together.
Oh, thank you.
I just love you guys.
Oh.
We love you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Rach.
So I never thought I would be talking about porn and pedophilia and all of that around while my family is watching.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really great.
I was thinking about that too, actually.
Yes, I remembered while we were talking about it.
It's a touchy
oh, man.
subject.
Yeah.
And obviously you or I are not as well researched on it as I could. I'd have to talk to some experts in psychology or something to really kind of get that perspective.
Yeah.
But again, just to reiterate, I am sensitive to people's experiences, both positive and negative, that come from this kind of stuff, and it's tough. It's a tough thing to talk about because people, people have been harmed both ways from this, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let's again try to move on to something else. I want to get to 2 more calls here.
Yeah.
At the end of the show. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. We're going to try you again, Sam, in Ohio. Sam, what's up? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
All right, let's see if we can have this conversation again.
Okay. I've been listening to a lot of vegan arguments online, and I find them very compelling. I really do see their point of view, and it's got me so close to wanting to become a vegan, but there's these 2 little arguments that popped up into my head, and I wanted to voice them with somebody that would care and see what kind of response I can get.
Lay it on us.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, man.
Yeah, I mean, we're not the vegans, we're not the target audience, but I'll see what I can do for you.
Yeah, well, help me out with my logic or whatever.
Go for it.
So, basically, the first problem I have with it is that it presupposes that human beings are better than animals, that we are in some way superior to them, because we accept that animals eat animals. This is something that happens. We can't do anything about that. And to even try to contemplate what we would do about it is ridiculous. You have to let animals eat, right? I'm sorry.
You're good.
Yeah. if we presuppose that human beings are better than animals or superior in some kind of way, then we can make an argument for why we should not partake in animalistic behavior. But if we can't do that, if we are not better or superior to them, then who are we to judge other animals, including human beings, about what they consume?
I think the vegans' main argument when talking about kind of moral assumptions is that the moral assumptions that we have about human beings, I think they would argue, are arbitrary to some extent. That our view as superior above other animals is on some level arbitrary and therefore not justified, I think is, a quick and dirty way to put it out there.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's like if somebody says that a certain marginalized group of human beings is incapable of excelling to the levels of another group of human beings, we would call them racists, right?
I see what you're getting at, yeah.
I mean, it's just that it seems kind of specious to act like human beings don't deserve to act the same way as other animals.
Okay.
But then the other argument I had...
that first one's interesting because it's almost a reverse of the expectations I've heard from vegan citizens.
Yeah.
That's interesting, yeah.
So I was watching this TED Talk, and there was this guy who hooked up a mimosa root bark to another plant and sent an electrical signal through the leaves and an actuation of, whatever the equivalent of a plant's neuron is. It sent the signal. They were able to communicate with each other, these two plants. And he did a demonstration showing that these plants can count. He showed that the plants can remember, that they have memory.
That is so
I was watching
cool.
There's this colony of trees, I think in, I don't even remember the country. It's called Pando. It's supposedly the oldest or the largest living organism on the planet right now.
It's the tree that has the roots underground and it connects to all these other trees, but they're actually part of the same organism.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I've seen that.
And it's like the paradigm of the plant's experience or existence, whatever it is, right, is so foreign to us that we could never possibly comprehend it. Well, not right now anyways. So, who are we to say that these plants are okay to eat, but not the animals?
Okay, so I think the vegan would say, and I'm putting on my vegan hat here, is there some sort of objective measurement that we could make between the levels of harm between animals and plants? And if so, if we could come to agreement on some sort of metric, then could we agree that some acts of eating and these kinds of things are more harmful than others? Now, that's the point you make is interesting because we don't know what it's like to be a plant, but I also don't know what it's like to be a dog. But it would seem to be that my experience as a human, it would be closer to that of a dog's than it would be to that of plants, right? Because we can respond with similar stimuli, so we have at least an empathetic understanding on some level of what that's like. And I think that's what vegans would find distasteful, because we at least know that we would be harming animals in some sort of way because we have that empathy and we know that they have pain in similar ways to us, right?
Okay, so I want to throw out as well something that I think is an issue to the vegan community. I think a lot of them.
Ooh, are you calling out the vegans on my show right now?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Yes. Well, I think part of
we're about to lose
the reason,
patrons because of you. You
okay,
can't
well,
do this.
I donated $10 to the Patreon a few weeks ago, so.
That doesn't okay.
So I think you'll be okay for right now, and I'm on the side of the vegans.
Okay.
For this purpose.
Okay.
I do think that one of the arguments for why they are vegan is because of the mistreatment of the animals that are being farmed as meat. They're
those arguments definitely I agree with. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and so I think that definitely is something to think about as maybe we wouldn't maybe we would be omnivores. We would all be omnivores if these animals weren't so mistreated. But, I don't really know because I'm not vegan, obviously. So
I don't know, because so that would be the implication there, and I do want to let Sam make his point too, because I think you want to respond. But just to immediately respond to that, Christy, if we had ethical practices, or what you would deem ethical practices for all animals, going all the way up, I'm talking dogs, chickens, cows, whatever, would that make you more okay with eating meat?
I wouldn't eat dogs and stuff.
Okay,
I mean, it's a gray area.
All right, so just cows and chickens, right?
Yeah.
That would make you, like, would that affect your feelings about eating meat? Whether, okay, interesting.
Yeah, I think it would, but I would think I would feel a little bit more okay with it if it was a lot more ethical and humane, or even if we could like do some of the lab-grown meat. I would feel a lot better if we could do something like that.
Yeah, that would be a bit different. But I want to hear Sam's thoughts now.
I was just like to, the comment that you had made a little bit ago, Dan. I know this is we're talking to a straw vegan here. But,
sure. Yes.
I would just say to that straw vegan, if that's what his response would be, I would say that it kind of sounds to me like it's no different than if it's kind of tribalistic, but on a grander scale. It's like, people who look like me, who have the same skin tone as me, I identify with them better, and so I can empathize with them better, and I can take them into my community and embrace them easier than people who look a little bit different than me. Oh. And I think like that's kind of what's going on here when we delineate between plants and animals. I mean, we've got these, like the Venus flytrap is a meat-eating plant, We don't know what these plants could be capable of over a long enough period of evolution. And I don't know if you ever watched that show Farscape back in the day, but there was a plant descendant sentient being on that show, and that's one thing that pops into my head. Like, what if these plants could eventually evolve to be sentient too, but we're going to farm them and use them as food for the rest of our lives? Just insane.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting, Sam. I didn't think about it like that before. So you're saying that actually including like dogs and cows and other mammals in particular, I guess, is really what I was thinking of. All of that, putting that as a group and saying this is off limits, but the plants is actually tribalistic on some sort of grand, just life existing level. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if our goal is to be not specious at all, then we should be embracing every species. I mean, but then if we do that, what are we going to do about the plague or AIDS or whatever? Those are species too.
So if
how far do we want to go with this?
Okay, so what if we had some sort of animal that we could prove, or even a plant that we could demonstrate on some level doesn't actually feel anything when we like cut it up into bits, or when we take care of it and stuff, like doesn't even have any concept of pain and stuff? Would that, in your eyes, make it? Would we have an ethical obligation to eat that kind of animal rather than other kinds of animals?
I mean. Yeah, definitely. I think so.
Okay.
If we could prove that there's a delineation between what one species feels versus another, we should cause the least amount of harm possible. But I mean, like, and I know Christy had mentioned the lab-grown meat before. That's where I'm at too. Like, I can't wait for that to come out.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what I'm going to switch to immediately. Yeah. I'm not okay with murdering animals for my pleasure, but I eat. And I have been a meat eater all my life. That's my diet, and I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm probably just post hoc rationalizing to make excuses for it. But at the same time, I mean, prove me wrong.
Yeah. I'm at the point in my life where I could definitely see myself becoming vegan at some point. Like, I'm not against it. I'm not fully there yet. And, I don't know what's holding me back. I need to talk to Cosmic Skeptic a bit more. Actually, hoping to have him on in a few weeks. But he was the one that really got me, especially after I got to talk to him in person about it a little bit too while we were here. He kind of got me on the ball rolling a little bit on that again, because that wasn't really in my purview. But
yeah, and see where I'm from, I can't really afford to be vegan because in Alabama it's very meat oriented, and it's very hard to find a lot of good vegan options. You know, there's no vegan restaurants.
But Christy,
anything.
Alex might say, well, Christy, you know, if you have the means, like you should. I think it's
that's a pretty good impression. I like that.
Christy, if you have the means at any point, you should try to eat vegan as much as you can when you can. It's just like, even though you can't go to the gym every single day, but you still need to make strides to do it because it's better for your health.
Yeah, but then if you do that, right, you've also got to take into consideration that the company that you're buying from has to be completely vegan as well. Otherwise, you're just wasting your money.
Yeah.
Like, if you buy from a company that has other products that are animal-based, then they're profiting off of that. They're going to use the money that you spent to increase their inventory of animal products.
Yeah, that's true. You know, there's a co-op here, like a food co-op here in town, and I was talking to Christy, like, oh, maybe we should get membership into that co-op, just so like we're kind of supporting, you know, a good industry and stuff like that. Yeah, seriously, like I think that's a good idea. And I'm at a weird spot. I'm like you, Sam. It's like, yeah, like the vegan ethos is incredibly appealing to me.
Yeah,
I really like what they're doing. Like, I'm just not all the way there yet. Yeah. But I'm also like you, Sam, because you're calling into this show because I think maybe you're like me in that, like, you want to be proven wrong on this, right? Like, you want to get there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like, and for me, I almost think it's a matter of time. But maybe, maybe I'll always be like this. I don't know. But it's a good topic to discuss either way. Hopefully, we got to shed a little bit more light on this, Sam, and I appreciate you calling.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Yeah, see you later. Yeah. That's going to be fun when he actually shows up on my show, Cosmic Skeptic.
Yeah, he'll probably bring it up, and he'll probably bring up here.
Oh, he doesn't care. Yeah, he doesn't.
Well, I mean, he may. You don't know.
First of all, Alex does not watch. I know for a fact he doesn't watch my show.
Well,
but, you know.
He might.
If somebody brought it up to him, that'd be really funny.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, all right, so we do have one more call we want to get to tonight before we wrap things up here. This is Stan in Pennsylvania. Stan, can you hear us?
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm all right. Hello, Christy. How are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Fine. I wanted to say that I find your accent very charming, very nice.
My accent?
Yeah.
Thank you.
She's got that Alabama charm.
If you don't stop.
This is a complete side note, okay? But I've always wondered, right? So people from like the north, I'm actually from the north, always talk about how much they like the southern accent. But do people from the south see that about people from the north?
Listen,
like,
man. No. It depends on what part of the north. Like if you're from Wisconsin, that's not a good Wisconsin accent. I don't know, like New York and stuff like that. Now here's the thing. I thought I had an accent until I met Christy. Now, Christy's accent, you can really tell. I don't know. If you listen to me, I'm not sure you can tell that I grew up most of my life in Texas.
Okay, well, this is Dan's accent. When he goes to the drive-thru, he always orders a Sprite.
That's true. I do emphasize the Sprite.
Yeah.
Right? That's my thing.
He likes to say all of the consonants in his words.
When I'm ordering, yes, because I want...
No, you do it all the time.
No, maybe. But anyway...
He's going to make fun of me. I'll make fun of him.
I know
back.
you wanted to talk to us more than just our accents, right, Stan?
But this is a good call. This is a good start to a call.
All right.
Okay. All right.
But okay. So yeah, I did want to talk to you guys. Pretty much build on your previous call on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And specifically on hate speech. Right?
Yes.
And so previously, I think probably most of the people who are listening to this show, was like, absolutist with free speech, like, it's paramount, like it's the basis of, one of the basic freedoms of our country. And, like we can't undermine that at all. It'd be anti-American to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. And I supported, all attempts to defend it. But I've changed on that recently because people have introduced me to expand my thoughts on the effects of speech, right? Mm-hmm. And hate speech, I think, is something I think are especially at this point in time, our society hasn't really grappled with the effects of, right? Hate speech has a cost, right? It's for the people, the target of hate speech, right? Like it increases danger to them. Like you can see this, for instance, today with the sharp rise in anti-Semitism, all right? Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and also we can see a spike in anti-Semitic attacks, physical attacks. And I mean, we've had a massacre just a little while ago.
Yes.
So these effects are real, right? Like I think it's so easy from a theoretical standpoint, just to say, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. We're like these freedoms are important, and like kind of look at them as if they're in a vacuum, right? Like this speech goes out into the world, and the fact that we simply allow it to happen, and we have other speech potentially to counter it, that like we don't have to worry about what happens afterwards, right?
Yes.
But I feel like the evidence shows otherwise. I mean, especially after 9/11, right? There was a sharp rise in Islamophobic speech and a sharp rise in Islamophobic attacks, right? And so I think it's something that we really need to consider, and like we just aren't. Previously I was more of a free speech absolutist, and there's like a famous case with the ACLU, right? They defended the KKK because they wanted to march through a Jewish community, all right? And so, like, the free speech activists that they are, they defended that. And I thought, like, okay, I mean, like, I guess we have to mean it at all points in time that we're behind free speech, but, like, the psychological, even if it's not a physical thing, but the psychological toll on these things are real. And I feel like the people who are the most dogmatic on free speech, I think, are the people who are least affected by hate speech, right? I think people that are privileged and from privileged position who maybe aren't parties, minority groups, right, whatever they may be, and it's just there's a distance, from these effects, right? So what do you guys think about that?
Man, Stan, beautifully worded. I think you've summed up a lot of the conclusions I've come to. I would say, in the grand scheme of things, quite recently as well. As far as again, I was a free speech absolutist. I'm not as confident on that anymore, and that's not to say that I won't change on that. But I am less confident now because I seem to be seeing more and more harms every day that speech has. Like if I tried to punch Christy right now,
do it.
I'm not going to, but if I tried to, like, somebody would want to stop me, and like I could get thrown in jail. There could be repercussions. But if I said something really terrible to Christy that could hurt her in other ways that aren't obviously physical, I might not have any repercussions that could happen to me. Maybe there are some social repercussions. We talked about the free marketplace of ideas, but like legally speaking, I could say pretty much anything to you right now that really wouldn't get me in a whole lot of trouble. And there is, again, I guess the speech and what's considered hate is kind of up in the air at that point. But the effects, right, like the harms, you could still say are happening, both when I punch you and when if I actually say something to you, right? I'm sorry that's such a that's the most visceral example I could think of.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
Yeah. Well, what do you think?
I think you said it well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the question at this point is just like, what is the hate speech? How do we define it? How do we get a consistent definition of it that it doesn't end up biting us in the end? And like what do we classify? What goes on forward? Stuff like that, right?
I feel like I think you bring a very good point there, Dan. The biggest argument against regulating hate speech is the whole slippery slope argument. And there is some validity to this argument, right? Because once you give the people in power tools to limit speech, right, they will at some point attempt to limit speech that goes against them and call that hate speech, right? So like that's I think that's an important consideration. But I'd also like to direct our attention to the quote unquote great democracies of Western Europe, right? Like in many of those places, like the right of free speech doesn't exist, right? Like especially like in the UK, I think very famously, they don't have that. But it's not like this dystopian hellscape that people absolutists say will happen if you do limit free speech, right? Like they very aggressively go against things that are considered hate speech, but they still have a robust democracy, right? With robust political speech. So I feel like these arguments are often overblown, right? And like it's, I guess I'm looking at this as the theoretical harm that could come from limiting free speech, right? Which is what we're supposedly guarding against. Yeah. And then looking at actual harm that's happening right now, now that we've taken this absolute stance, right? So, as atheists, I think we understand that people are sheep, right? We see that through religion. They're easily swayed one way or the other, right? And a big example of this, right, for instance, was when President Obama, during his just before his second term, he came out as for marriage equality, right? And so they took polls before and afterwards. And afterwards, the support of marriage equality spiked, right? Now, this is a huge topic, right? That I mean, it's not like it wasn't in public conversation, but it seems that people didn't actually think about it, right? They were just against it because society was more or less against it. But once an authority figure told them it's okay, they're like, oh sure, okay, whatever, And it points out just how easily people can be swayed one or the other for good or for bad, right? And if we properly put that into context, right, of actual harm, I'm African American, and my kids, right, they will be affected by that kind of speech, right? Speech against us, right, can easily, end up in us being harmed. I mean, we see this with police violence, right? Because our culture has taken on this idea that, African Americans are violent and can't be trusted and are suspicious, right? There are individuals with guns who act out on these things, right? So, yeah. It's real to me, right? Those consequences. And then beyond that, right? It's so easy just for kids, even the affected minority groups, the targeted groups, they can, easily take in these messages as well, right? So, less than all your life people will believe it eventually, So I feel like we're living in a society that just hasn't really grasped this and tackled it.
Yeah, I guess maybe not in the United States, but like you said, there are other countries that deal with this differently. I do want to correct myself. I was saying earlier that we don't really have the same legal repercussions. I mean, there is more than what I mentioned, actually. There is, libel is something that you can't really do. And interestingly enough, here, this show is produced by the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a nonprofit organization, which means I'm actually limited in what I can say on speaking as a production of the organization. A common one that's brought up is none of us can particularly advocate for political candidates on here, so if they're running and stuff like that. That's a rule that limits my speech, and yet you know what? I get along just fine. I was listening to the Dissect podcast from Spotify. And it was talking about Tyler the Creator, and Tyler the Creator is this rapper who has gotten famous through rapping, right? I mean, he makes great music, but he was, I think it was the UK, he was banned from going to a few years ago because his lyrics at the time, and this was 2013, 2012, I think, maybe 2014, that was saying the F word in description of gay people, along with a bunch of other stuff. And even though it was lyrics he didn't really adhere to anymore, or at least didn't mean any violence behind what he was saying, he still wasn't allowed to go into the country. I think it was a temporary ban. I think he was back to go in. But I remember listening to an interview describing his experience with that, saying like, oh, wow, this really sucked for me. And I think he did feel sorry for kind of what he had said. But also at the same time, there were a lot of advocacy groups at the time that was saying like, hey, don't listen to this guy's music. He's a homophobe. He says this kind of stuff. But that's an interesting case because he is someone who's changed on his stances on that and stuff. So, yeah, it's one of those things where, and I don't know if you addressed it to my satisfaction at least. It's just the problem of defining speech, because you know what, there are people who could listen to my program and say that it's hate speech towards Christians because we talk about Christians so much. Again, like we make the argument that like, yeah, we're part of a minority group in this country, but it gets messy real quick. And I think if we're going to continue having these kinds of conversations, we need to focus on what we're calling hate speech, demonstrating those harms with the best arguments possible, and seeing if it's worth making rules about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. But Stan, I appreciate your perspective. I'm gonna probably listen to it again when you're talking again on that sometime when this gets uploaded to the channel, because this is something that I think we could all research a bit more on and change our opinions on.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking my call. I think you two are a lovely couple.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a great night.
Thank you, Stan. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for calling, man.
Man, we are a great couple. Best couple? No.
Best couple?
Best on I was gonna say best couple on Atheist YouTube, but I do know Paul and Shannon. Best.
We could be the best ACA couple.
There's other people here besides us, Christy.
We could be the best Truth Wanted couple.
I mean, talk about a participation trophy, right?
Some participation trophies are worth more than you'd think.
Okay. Well, with that, I think that's going to wrap up this episode of Truth Wanted.
Wait.
No, not doing that now. Not doing that now. Okay, so like a week or two ago, I did say that, hey, if you donate $10 to the Patreon, I'll rap for you or something, I guess.
Yes, he was going to freestyle rap, and as soon as he said that, I donated $10 to the Patreon.
Yes, and Christy did donate, and I don't think anybody else did.
Yeah, but I did, and I think he should freestyle rap for me.
No.
I think you should show the audience what wooed me originally.
I don't know if I actually said freestyle. I'd have to check the records.
You did?
I'd have to check the...
Hey, I took the notes.
Anyway,
I took those show notes.
Okay, so I'm the host of this show, so I'm going to keep going on and pretend
oh my goodness.
This isn't happening right now. But
right.
Maybe later on, I'll make a video of me rapping when I'm ready. Can I
edit it?
Sure.
Can I make it into a music video?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
So anyway, Christy, where can people find you at?
All right, you can find me at Stargazelle _ on Twitter.
Yep.
I'm super active on there. I tweet a lot. It's pretty fun. And you can find me at goodaftergod.video.blog. And soon I will be creating my own YouTube channel, probably to put some videos on my blog.
Yes, it does say video.blog, although there are no videos there.
Well, that was the free domain name, and I did not want to pay money.
Fair enough.
I took it, and I decided, well, maybe I'll make videos.
That's cool.
So, yeah, find me on Twitter. Read my blog. That'd be pretty cool. If anybody has any ideas about what I should write about, I'm totally open to DMs. I'm totally open to guest posts. If anybody wants to make their own blog post, I'd be happy to host it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I am Objectively Dan. In case this is your first time tuning in, this is Truth Wanted. We go live every week at 7 o'clock Central Time on YouTube, and we're also available after the live show. It goes on Spotify, iTunes, wherever else you get your podcasts at. You can email me on the show at truth@atheist-community.org. You can also catch me on Twitter. I'm at ObjectivelyDan. That's where I'm most active. We also have a Truth Wanted Facebook group that you can join. And I'm on Discord. I haven't been on Discord lately, but there is an Atheist Community of Austin Discord that you should definitely check out, that I definitely need to get on there more. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up here, Christy?
I'm just ready to hear your rap.
I'll do it when I'm good and ready, okay? It's an art. This isn't just some, if I did it now, it would spoil the moment, and it needs to be right. Okay?
Well, I think everybody needs to know why freestyle rap is so important to us.
Why is it important to us?
So when Dan and I first met...
you're going to tell that story?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
We're telling the story.
Real quickly, so we can wrap things up.
Yeah, for sure. So when Dan and I first met at the SSA conference, we were at a panel, right? Mm-hmm. And it was this lady, and she's really cool. She's a neurosurgeon or neuroscientist, and her husband freestyle raps. And Dan was sitting 2 chairs over from me, and he leaned over and he goes, "I can freestyle rap."
Yes.
And then he did.
I did.
And it was really bad and hilarious, and I loved it.
But it worked.
It did work, because
Right.
look where we are now. So
That's it. So
yeah.
Pro tip, guys.
Yeah, if you want a girlfriend,
When you're flirting with girls, offer to freestyle rap.
it works.
It works.
This is objectively true.
That's right. I can't believe you told that story.
Well,
but that's it. That's how it happened. Okay, that about wraps it up for this week's episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, Objectively Dan, and as always, keep wanting the truth, folks. We'll see you next time.